in terms of questions and answers throughout your session, we'll be moderating the chat and sort of responding if we can. Otherwise, if you're happy, we'll just do like the Q&A at the end, or whenever you want to, if you want to stop in between, totally up to you. So we'll kick it off.
Sounds good.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us in this June Power BI and Analytics for Enviro's session. Welcome to the new people. Welcome to people that have sort of been involved in the last few sessions. We've been just under 2 years now running these. So no, it's really, really good, and we're really looking forward to today's session. Just a bit of housekeeping for those people that are new. I think we're all very familiar with Teams as a platform, but feel free to type any questions you have in the chat as we go along. We'll try and answer it. Otherwise, we'll have opportunities for Shannon to sort of jump in and discuss. Feel free to bring your video on when you're asking these questions if you want. But otherwise, just out of respect for the presenters, just please just sort of turn your video off and go on mute. As a reminder, this session is being recorded and we'll make it available on our YouTube channel and the blog page afterwards. Just like to acknowledge the people and the elders of the Boon Wurrung and the Bunurong, members of the Kulin Nation. So they're the traditional owners and custodians of sort of the land and waters where Alice and I are dialing in from today, down in the Mornington Peninsula, as you can see on one of these photos during one of my runs along this beautiful coastline. But also like to acknowledge the traditional owners from wherever you're dialing in from across Australia and or across the world, I suppose, which is very, very exciting. Alice and I are both co-founders of Discovery Eye, along with, we work with Daniel Marsh-Patrick, who's also on the call. Just a bit of information, we really focus on the environmental and water industry, so yeah. And on to today's session, while everyone's dialed in, we're very excited to have Shannon Lindsay dialing in from currently in Seattle, but I understand Shannon moving around the States a little bit as of late. No, really good to have you on, and very much looking forward to this session today. Get the next one. Which is all about practicing your data visualization skills with the Workout Wednesday initiative. That was relatively recent. So Shannon's going to talk us through how to create a custom theme in Power BI and this demo report, as well as other reports, all tailored around the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals data set that was covered as part of the session. So Shannon is a data and analytics practitioner with a background in global public health. She currently works as content developer on the data and AI team for Microsoft, and is also the Power BI user group leader and just general community enthusiast if you've seen her on LinkedIn and Twitter platforms. So without further ado, Shannon, please take it away, and thank you very much for getting involved today and presenting.
Thank you so much for having me. And I really like the tribute to the native owners of the land. I think that's really special. So thank you for pointing that out. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to start with a PowerPoint, and then I'm going to jump in I'm going to jump back and forth between some websites. But thanks so much for having me today. I am going to walk us through the Sustainable Development Goal and indicators that we visualized in Power BI. This was for something that was called the Workout Wednesday Challenge. And I'm going to talk us through a little bit about just what is that challenge, how can you get involved, and then we'll talk about how you can customize your own Power BI reports. I think the most important thing about this session is that every single person here feels like you have an opportunity to contribute if you want to. If you don't want to, that's okay too. You're welcome to stay on mute, but I know there are a lot of people on the line with a lot more expertise than me, so I'd love to hear from you about anything that I present. So you do not have to wait until the end for questions. Feel free to take yourself off mute, turn your video on anytime. That is completely fine. Just, I guess, reminder, it is recorded. So if you don't want your video to be on screen, probably no video. But I just welcome anybody to contribute at any time. I really applaud this user group. What you guys have done is amazing. And I think it's user groups like this that really transform people's lives and help their careers. So I'm really glad to see you all here. So let's jump in. All we're going to talk about today is really Workout Wednesday. What is it? How do you get involved? How can you do it? And then we're going to walk through a little bit of the week 17 challenge where we look at the SDG indicators. And then finally, we're going to talk through tips and tricks to customize your reports. And this is really the part where I'd love to hear from you all. My background, as was mentioned, is in global public health. I've been using Power BI since the beginning, fortunately, but I feel a lot like the data modeling and the whole kind of process, the BI process, is more my strength. And I made a real effort in the last couple of years to focus on getting better on the presentation of data. And I'm so lucky to have fallen into this Workout Wednesday kind of group. And so I am learning along with everyone else. So just keep that in mind. We're all learning here. So the last slide will be everybody all together. But so the first thing I wanted to talk about is just what is Workout Wednesday. So I'm sure some of you have seen this online, and if you haven't, that's okay too. I'm going to just drop some links into the chat as I talk. But Workout Wednesday is really just a bunch of people that get together and try different things in Power BI. It really came about from a group of Tableau enthusiasts, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with Tableau. I'm not afraid to talk about it. Tableau is a wonderful data visualization tool, and it's really, to me, you can create art in Tableau with data. We're trying to get there in Power BI. There are a lot of different strengths that Power BI has, but we are trying to build on to the Workout Wednesday initiative from the Power BI folks. Did I hear someone come off mute? Did somebody want to add anything about Workout Wednesday? I talk a lot, so just
Sorry,
want to
that
make
was
sure I get
accidental.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, anyone is welcome at any time. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing from this presentation and I'm going to jump into the Workout Wednesday site. But essentially, I just wanted to share that these workouts are open to anyone. And I think the best thing about them is that if you are trying to build a portfolio for yourself, or you just want to practice your skills, this is a really good place to do it. A lot of folks that participate in Workout Wednesday kind of build themselves a portfolio on GitHub or on their own website. And it's just a nice way to have something in your arsenal for when you're potentially interviewing, where you can say, oh, look, these are all of the things that I've built. I've had, I feel like, quite a few instances where I've been interviewing and people have said, oh, can you show me some of the things that you've built? And I'm like, oh, it's actually proprietary health data about individuals. So no, I cannot show that to you. So I think Workout Wednesday is a nice opportunity to be able to show people what you've been working on. So I just want to show off kind of the Workout Wednesday site here. We're going to be talking about this create a custom theme challenge. And I apologize, I'm on one screen here. So what you are seeing may be a little wild. But we're going to be talking about the Sustainable Development Goals. One thing that I think is really interesting when you're talking about data that either you're not familiar with or data that people are tracking for understanding how we are doing globally, it's really a lot more complicated than you may imagine. And so we actually built this report just to look at the indicators themselves. So the Sustainable Development Goals have 17 different indicators, and you can see as you click through them that there are a number of different goals underneath that, and the way that they are tracked is a bit complicated. So we don't go all the way down to the deepest levels here. But what we tried to do is just to display the goals visually so that we can understand, for example, something that might resonate with this group, access to clean water and sanitation. And then you can see all of the different goals that people are trying to achieve. One thing that I found really striking about this data set and this annual report is that they show pretty clearly the impacts of COVID-19 on the progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's really striking. So if you haven't read the report, I encourage you to take a look at it, and I will drop a link in the chat here. It is here. Sorry, again, on one screen, so please forgive me, but I want to make sure everyone has access to this. All right, so with this report itself, essentially there's not much happening here in this report that's super special. I'm going to walk you through just kind of what I did and how I built it. But in order to build this, everything is out of the box Power BI. So for example, I've got an image here. This image links out to the Sustainable Development Goals page. I'm working with a text box. This is a custom visual where we are looking at images. They are just a URL. I'll show you what the data source for that is. Again, here I'm working with an image and I've got a table here. So there's nothing like super special about this report. But what I did try to do with this report was to make sure that you were seeing the information that you really needed to see. And then I think the thing I like about it the most is just that we have these kind of backgrounds that change color with every little icon that you click on. So we're going to walk through it a little bit. But before I jump into the actual report itself, does anyone have questions about Workout Wednesday or about the Sustainable Development Goals, or does anyone have anything they want to mention before I carry on?
I think looking at the chat, we're all good. I think one of our members said they came across you while searching for something and really impressed with your solution for the week 35.
Oh,
Which is
I will have
cool.
to look at actually, let's take a look. What was week 35? I'm guessing that's 2021.
Oh yeah, they
I don't
posted
know.
the link in the chat.
Infographics.
Oh, is this the coffee cup? This one was super fun to create, actually. Yeah. So for these Workout Wednesday challenges, essentially we as a team, and Carrie is on the line too, so Carrie, feel free to hop on and jump in. But we really try to come up with challenges that are interesting and fun for people to do. And I just had never seen anything like this in Power BI. So I found a website that showed what are the different ingredients in different coffees. And so for example, I don't know, like an iced coffee versus cold brew coffee. They are actually different things. And so I created this little infographic. So if anyone wants to take a look, we'll drop the link is in the chat. So check it out. But I'm happy to hear that you liked it. It was really fun.
So creative.
It really stretches I am not a creative person. So it really stretches the creative side of my brain to work on these challenges, which is really nice. But I think from here, we will go ahead and jump into Power BI. Before we do that, actually, the place I want to start is talking about how do you create a custom theme and what is a custom theme even. So a custom theme in the terms of Power BI, we're going to just jump into Power BI desktop itself and take a look here at the themes. One thing that I really like about themes in Power BI, and I'm sure we have a variety of different skill levels and people who've been working on Power BI for different numbers of years, months, weeks. But one thing that I really love is these out of the box themes that exist. My favorite one here is this colorblind safe theme. And what that does is it makes the color palette for all of the visuals fall within one particular theme. And what we did for this report was we created a theme based upon the specific colors that exist within the Sustainable Development Goals. And if you are familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, we'll just jump back into their annual report here. They have one goal that is associated with each color, and their identity is really strong when it comes to how they use color. So I tried to build on that. And what I actually did was used a browser extension, which I would say use those with caution, but I ended up finding I believe this is the Hex Color Picker browser extension. And the link to this is in the blog post. So if you're interested, it's in that Workout Wednesday link that I dropped in the chat. And what you can do with this Hex Color Picker is really neat. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to create a theme that had each of the 17 colors included in it. So what you can do here is you can click on the little eyedropper, and you can use any browser extension. I'm not necessarily endorsing this one. I just found this one. It worked for me. So this is what I used. So we're going to click on the little eyedropper here. Let me just zoom in, see at here. And it's hard to tell with my giant mouse if I am actually getting the red there for goal 1. Let's see. I don't know if I got it. There we go. I have my mouse really big for presentations and then I can never find it again. I'm actually going to start from scratch because I have no idea what's going on. Let's try again. So we're going to start with color 1 and I think the red is highlighted, question mark. Okay, it looks like we got the red. Then we're going to go in and grab color 2, which is this goldenrod color. And we'll just go through color 3 and then I'll show you what the next steps are. Color 3, we've got this nice green. And this is how I started my theme. What you can do here is you actually have the opportunity to save this. So you can ask for it to give you a CSV, which I think is super cool. I'm sure there are other extensions that work similarly. And I would actually encourage if other people have favorite other either browser extensions or tools that you use to work specifically with colors, if you could drop those in the chat, that would be much appreciated. And hopefully we can talk about those. So you just get this little CSV export from the color picker, and we will wait until this loads. And what is nice about this is that you get the hex color for the color itself. How many times in one sentence can I say color? You get the explanation for what the color is. And then actually what I did in this case was I used this file as my base. And then I also included my images that I wanted to use in the report in this one file as well. So I just kind of used this as a way to get everything all in one place. One other tool that I will shout out, since we're talking about colors, is this color contrast analyzer. And I'm going to talk about accessibility a little bit more later on, but the color contrast analyzer is a really nice tool where you can just look and ensure that your background colors and your actual text have enough contrast that people with color vision deficiencies can see them. So I would shout out this tool as well. And for some reason, I can't open it. I'm not sure what's happening here. It's open 3 times. I can't show it on my screen, but color contrast analyzer is what it is. So if anyone is interested, this is another great tool. So after I created that theme, I then went to another favorite of mine, which is the PowerBI.tips website. So if anyone knows the folks that run the PowerBI.tips website, they are great people. They have been really active in the community for a long time. Their website has so many different tools on it. You can create your own themes. They have custom charts and custom backgrounds. They have DAX templates that they provide. They also have a number of different tools that you can use with the tools that you can embed in your Power BI desktop, the external tools. So this is a super cool site. I highly recommend it. One thing that I do really love is this theme generator. And the way that I used it for this challenge is I took the hex colors from this RGB hex column, and I went ahead and pasted them into the multiple input box here on their website. I clicked add. You can do a quick preview here of what the colors are, and then you're able to download the theme, which is super great. And what this is going to give you is, I'm just going to call this Workout Wednesday. What this is going to give you is a JSON theme that you can then import into your report. And now this is just in a notepad, so it's not formatted, but what you get is just one line of text that shows you what these colors are. So that is what I used for this report. Before I go on, I would love to ask, is there anyone on the line that creates custom themes for your organization? Do you have a JSON template that you use in your org? And if so, I'd love to hear how you use it. I'm so curious about this.
We use custom themes a lot, and we also help set up custom themes for different organizations as well. We tend to just use the out-of-the-box customize your theme in Power BI rather than going to the Power BI tips website where you can customize like almost 70% of your theme. I think that this one is really good, especially in training. It's really easy for people to understand. You can pick your colors and you can see it update live as well. Yeah, when Microsoft brought this in a couple of years ago, this was really good. We love this.
Thank you for pointing this out. Yeah, thank you so much.
If anyone else, does anyone else on the call use kind of custom themes for your organization? Or didn't know about it? Oh, hopefully this has opened up your eyes a little bit to some of the sometimes more hidden features in Power BI. So Janessa has a report template with a customized theme already. Carrie sets up templates regularly. Cool.
I love this. I think, particularly if you're in like a smaller, medium-sized organization and you want to make sure that folks are using your custom theme for, that everyone is using the same theme, that your reports look like they are all coming from the same place. I think this is a really good place to start. And Alice, I'm so glad you brought this up. One thing I wanted to point out that I have not yet is the first place I go anytime I'm customizing a theme is I go right here to the text settings, because I am a little bit, I don't have great vision and I cannot deal with the tiny default font sizes in Power BI. So one of the first places I always go is I go here to the general tab. I set the font size to 12, no matter what. It is proven that the minimum font size on any website that is readable should be a minimum of font size 12. So I always start there. And then you can, change the font families and change the different titles and all of that. And what does happen behind the scenes is that JSON files are created. And actually, if you want to look at what is created from customizing the themes here in Power BI, you can save. I'm getting a little into the weeds here, so pull me back if you want me to come back. But you can save these files. You can change the file extension on your Power BI file to a .zip file, and then you can get all the guts out of the report so you can understand everything that's behind it, and you will be able to find the theme file within there if you're interested. But I'm going to come back up to where I probably should be for a moment. So looking at these colors here, another thing that I like to change right off the bat, talking about accessibility, and I did not do this in this report, but so I'm just telling on myself for not doing a good job. But the sentiment colors, I always like to change these right away because people with color vision deficiency can't see the red, green kind of stoplight color palette. That's not a great one. So I may change this to orange and blue, for example, just so that when I'm doing any visuals where I use custom formatting on a particular column, that you're able to see, what is what. So I am going to come back to my report. So after you create and import your theme, the next thing to do is to gather the URLs for the images that you're using in your report. Now, in this report, I use two different types of images. I use static images that I downloaded from the web. So for example, this icon here, what I did was just on the insert tab here, I inserted an image. This was something that was saved locally. And then you can use, whatever image it is you have on your machine. So that is one option. The second option is to use image URLs. And I actually did that in a couple of different ways in this report. So the first way that I did that, and we'll jump back into the web just to take a peek at these, but sorry, the toolbar is in the way and I can't see what I'm doing here. I went to the SGG website and I essentially just took a look at, what did they have listed what do they have shown on their website? I right-clicked on the image, and then you get to this kind of PNG that is the image URL itself. So I embedded these, or really copy and pasted. Let's not use fancy language. I copy and pasted these into my template, which was just that Excel template that had the hex colors in it. So for the actual, my brain is not functioning. For the actual icon itself, for the logo, that's the word I was looking for. For the logo for the SDGs, I saved this locally. And then for each of the icons, I used the URL and I dropped those just into this dim image table. And then the last thing I did, which was a little extra special for this report, but I really wanted to make it visually, not only visually appealing, but I really wanted to make it tell a story, was that I added these, I'm calling them alternate images. They're really the main image, whereas this is just kind of for the image selector. But I added these images here. And the way I did this was also a little bit tedious, but I think had a really big payoff. So what I did was I started with the SDG report. I navigated, sorry for the scrolling. I know this is hard on the eyes. I should have had this queued up, but I did not. I navigated to the image for each SDG indicator. And then I just tried to pick, either what was their key image that they had selected, or I picked one that I thought really spoke volumes and made sense and represented what indicators we were collecting to measure this goal. So for this goal, this is goal number 1. We're looking to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. Big, big, big goal. And so I picked this, what the global poverty rate is projected to be in 2030. And what I was trying to show here was that unfortunately we are not on track. We are missing the target. And actually, as I speak, I'm starting to think of even, I don't want to say necessarily better, but just different ways that this could be displayed. Perhaps we could look at goals that are on track versus goals that are not on track. Some of this has to do with pulling information out of a PDF, which is possible, but not ideal. So I think do with that what you will. There are so many different ways that we could represent this data. But so for these images, what I did was I just snipped the image using Snagit, or you could use snipping tool, you could use PowerPoint. There's a number of different things you could use. And then I also created an image URL. So I used a website to upload these to, I guess, whatever their free blob storage is. I don't really know how that works, but I then used that URL in my file. So I will jump back and just show you what that looks like.
Awesome. And Shannon, we just got a question on images just while you're chatting through it. It's from Pane. For the image URL to work, does the image need to be on a public site, or will that work behind a corporate firewall or from Sharepoint sites as well?
I do not know the answer to that question. I think that, so for all of the images I used, they were all on a public site, but I would love to know, I'm sure there are people on the line that know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I think just looking when I was asking it, Philippe's already typed in saying that you can use images from SharePoint. You only have to have a guarantee that your users of the report will also have access to the SharePoint data sources as well. So that's a really good option for internal organizations. Say you have images of maybe all of your staff, if they're saved on a SharePoint site where other people have access to it, then that will work. I think we've done that before as well, but I think if it's a public report, then you do have to make those images kind of publicly available. I think, what one do we use? We use IMGDB as an image hosting site, or there's tons out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I have not done that before, so I don't know. So I appreciate that. One thing to think about with the images is to think about, what do you need to use them for, and how dynamic do they need to be? Because in some cases, you can generally just jump to a website, download the image, and you can use it just like I did here in this logo. But if you need it to be dynamic, I think the easiest way to do it is to make sure that it's it's publicly available on a website. I don't know. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. Especially if your reports, if your Power BI report's going to be public, then yeah, definitely make it publicly available. It just depends if you're using it internally within an organization as well. So just, I think the key thing to think about is making sure that your end users of the report have access to those images. Graham just posted, SharePoint privileges are a can of worms. Yeah, when you get to data and security, it's tricky.
Yeah, and I don't have a ton of experience using images in a corporate setting because, quite honestly, most of the reports I work on, I commit the crime of spending 90% on the back end and 10% on the report. So I would love to hear more about how people are truly using images. I think your user group in particular, from what I've seen of what you all have produced, you all are really like on the cutting edge of the design front. I think I've seen so many things from your user group and from you all that looks like it's really beautifully designed. So I'd love to see more examples if people want to post examples in the chat of how you're using them. But I actually haven't done it much in a corporate setting.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I guess environmental data, it is really visual. So it does tend to be a lot of focus on the front end. So yeah, for sure, everyone post in the chat if you have some really good examples of using images. But thanks, Shannon.
I have a follow-up question for the group. I'm going a little bit off track here, but this is what I tend to do. So because environmental data is so visual, how do you all deal with accessibility issues and alt text in particular?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Does anyone in the group have any ideas? I know we've looked into it a little bit. I guess what people are thinking, what we would do is you can assign the alt text for images. So if you have a static image, just like you're showing on your screen there, Shannon, and if it is an image that you want all audiences to be able to kind of navigate and understand what it's showing, then you can include the alternate text there. If it's a static image, and you can use the dynamic alternate text where it has the FX there to make it dynamic if you've got data-driven images as well.
By default, screen readers will call out the title of different visuals. So adding that extra context as well in terms of, especially for images is, extremely important, especially we having built a lot of public Power BI reports, making sure you hit the standards or try and aim for the standards of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So the WCAG guidelines is super important. There are some areas where in Power BI, you need to put a bit of effort into these sort of, alt text, tab order to be able to make sure you're satisfying some of those different clauses. So yeah, it's really important to aim for those. What's your experiences, Shannon? Obviously, building a lot of these public-based reports, focusing on accessibility and how we can incorporate it into our Power BI reports. How do you go about it?
I'm still learning, so let me start there.
Yeah.
I think, the bare minimum is I try to hit a couple of different things. I try to have some alt text populated. The next thing that I make sure I do is that I have the tab order set. So if you aren't familiar with tab order, just very briefly, so when you press the tab button to go across the screen. So as you can see right now, let me jump back here. So after I'm in the alt text, let me just zoom in here. The next thing I tab to, it goes to the formula bar. The next thing I tab to goes to reset to default. So that's, for the software itself. But we have the ability to set the tab order ourselves on our reports. So if you go to the view, it's the selection pane. My brain has stopped working. It's almost 8 o'clock at night, so forgive me. Where is it?
A selection pane. So it's just, you're in view just to the right of the filter. Yeah.
When I said it was my first day using a computer, I was not joking. Okay, so in the selection pane, thank you guys so much. You've got your layer order and then your tab order, and these don't have to be the same. So that's the first thing to point out. And what you can do here is you can say, these are So my image is the logo here. Then I've got my text box, and it's not actually selecting. I'm not sure why. But it goes through the different, oh, these aren't in order. That's why. So this is not done properly. And then you can also select the different items that you want to be hidden. So if you have kind of decorative items that you wouldn't necessarily want a screen reader to explain, or, you know, that don't need to be included as someone tabs through a report, those you can set as decorative by just clicking on the world's tiniest eyeball here that shows and hides them. But I think for me, the bare minimum is the alt text and the tab order. And then, of course, the colors, making sure that they are color vision deficiency friendly, colorblind friendly. Is there anything else that I'm missing for top accessibility tips?
Yeah, I think that's they're the key ones. We also focus on accessibility as in terms of ease of navigation. So just making sure that for new users, it's really obvious, including little kind of instructions in place and things like that. And also if you've got embedded media along with not only images, but if it's videos, just include alt text or subtitles, no looping, no embedded GIFs on loop. But I think, yeah, they're the main ones. They're the big ticket items. So if you can get the alt text, tab order, and colors, then that's probably 80%.
Excellent. Cool. Okay, awesome. I love the accessibility. I don't want to say tangent because I think it should be at the forefront. So I love that we're talking about this. And just, you know, one like tiny little tip you can see here, it's hard to see because we're looking, well, first of all, most of the screen is taken up by these fields here. But if you hover over this logo that I have here, the text says, learn more about the SDGs. This could probably be improved to make it better. And where you would improve that, where you would do that is under the general tab. Oh no, this is a tooltip. Sorry. I'm just showing you all everything I don't know here, but there is a tooltip setting here, and this is where you can specify the text. You also have the opportunity to make it dynamic. So one thing that I did want to point out, and I'm just going to jump back into the slides because we're just jumping ahead and I'm totally fine with that. The main thing that I wanted to mention was that in Power BI as a tool, it really serves us well to actually customize the reports. The out-of-the-box reports may work for your needs, and that is completely fine. But when you use things that are out of the box, they are missing things. They're missing things that tell the story with the data. They're missing accessibility. They're missing, you know, things that we don't know from a technology standpoint. So what's the purpose of this report? What story are we trying to tell with the data? Who's the audience? Who's looking at this? Is it actually usable? You know, all of these things that we're talking about. So I love this tangent that we're going on. Does anyone have anything to add? Because we just talked about a lot. So does anyone have anything to add, things that you all have done to make your reports more usable?
Just having a look in the chat, I think there's a bit of comments about alt text. I know that Kerry and Daniel, you're really big on visualization and clever ways of presenting data. Have you got any thoughts on this?
I don't really have too much to add, really. I think simple is good, and just trying to cater for as many users as you possibly can. Sorry, that's not very impressive.
It is. I mean, I think that's the key, right? Like, if it's simple and people can understand it, that's the whole point of the visualization, right?
Absolutely.
So I think you nailed it.
Yeah, I've got a little
Awesome.
background noise at the moment, but yeah, no, it was a great presentation. I don't think I have much to add to that either.
Yeah,
Thank you.
James had a comment saying, is it possible to use animations? So James, is that like to make short animations to make it more interesting, or to help with the visualizations? Yeah.
I'm happy to take this, and then anyone else is welcome to jump in. So it is possible to use animations in Power BI. Well, it used to be a bit of a workaround, so I'm not sure if it's any different. But you can use animations as opposed to images in native visuals in Power BI, and you do it as the background. background to the image. I don't actually have really any decent examples here that I can show you in this report, but the long story short is that yes, it is possible. Does anyone have a better answer for that?
Yes, it's certainly possible. There's a few custom visualizations in the app source now that offer animations on SVG images and things like that. But I would advise to only do it if absolutely adds to the story and it makes the understanding of the data visual better. For example, I lost my words because there are people that have vestibular disorders that can feel very ill from animations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point. I tend to get a little animation happy, and then I try to add alt text to the animation. And then when I try to add the alt text, I'm like, is that animation really necessary? The one place where I found it to be really nice is in a tutorial for how to use the report page. So maybe like an overlay on the report page. And just to kind of add to what Carrie mentioned, so when she's talking about getting visuals from app source, if you just hover over these three little dots here in the visualizations pane in Power BI desktop, you can get more visuals, and this will take you straight to app source. And this is where, for example, if you wanted to, okay, no results for GIF. There we go. So here are a couple of custom visuals that you will find here. But excellent point about them being potentially dangerous to people or distracting or not helpful. Are there any other questions that we have before we go on? I think there's one more kind of major thing that I wanted to point out, and then I'll stop sharing and we can turn on video and open up the floor.
Awesome. Oh, great chat. I think having a look through the chat, I think we've covered off on all the questions, but feel free to go off mute if anyone does have a question at this stage. No, awesome. Do you want to just power on?
Sure, yeah. So the kind of the last thing I wanted to point out here in this report, well, there are many more things we could talk about, but the thing that I think is effective that I like about this report is when you select different icons in this kind of, what is this called? Collage by CloudScope. I don't know, icon picker. You may notice that the backgrounds change behind these different images. And what I wanted to point out is that is not, for most of these, I did not create an image and place it behind something and spend a lot of time tinkering with putting a box behind an image and all of that. This is something that you can do out of the box and that it's really easy. So I just wanted to show how this was done because I think it's really neat. So what you are able to do is in the image itself or the text box or whatever it is you're working with, you have the opportunity to format the background of the image. And what you can do is you can take a look here. That was just a guess that I hit effects and it was the right one. I always expand all of these, but you can take a look at the effects and you have the ability to format the background. You can do either a static color if you prefer, or you can do conditional formatting. So what I liked here is that I used that image file that I had initially created, and that was I had started with the theme and then I added my image URLs into that same just flat Excel file, CSV, whatever that was. And then I just created some custom formatting. So I did the format style was based on the field value. It was from this table, which was my image dimension. It was this RGB hex. Because it's a text value, it wants it to be the first, which is fine because that is correct in this case. It wouldn't always be. You may need to write some DAX to make this work properly. But in this case, I was able to be lazy and not write any DAX, which was nice. And so that is the way to set these images so that as you click through the icons here for the different SDG indicators, the backgrounds of everything changes. I think one more thing I wanted to point out here is just this transparency slider here. So if things are looking too bold, too bright, too distracting, you can tone it down a little bit. And I think with that being said, that's really kind of the key takeaway from this report. I wanted to create a slicer panel that was very visual so people could understand what it was that they were looking for. I wanted to include some infographics, but I was being, I will call it efficient, not lazy, but I wanted to use visuals that already existed. I am not a graphic designer. This is not my area of expertise. So I used ones that already existed. And then I just used a table visual to show what the goals were that we were trying to measure when we were looking at these indicators. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop. I feel like I could talk forever, but there's no need. I'm going to stop, and I want to just kind of open up the floor to questions, comments. I'd love to hear about people that are either, using color similarly, or that have experience using images and it's worked well, or maybe it hasn't worked well. I just love to hear how people are kind of using images and color in your reports.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. There were so many really cool tips and tricks that you showed there, like things as simple as creating a corporate theme file can go a long way to kind of communicating that trust in the data and the use of color. And images, it's really powerful. So thank you so much. Just really keen to open up the chat now and just chat through exactly what Shannon said, how people are using images in your organization, or in your reports, or how you would like to be using them. I see in the chat, Philippe, you mentioning that it's a bit of a pain point for you using images if you've tried to use the base 64 approach, but as data grows, it becomes unreliable to load all data into the Power BI data model, because that's a lot of data. If people aren't familiar with base 64, I think the way I like to think about it is it's converting like a raster image into text. So you end up with huge text, and sometimes it gets cut off as well. But yeah, well, how's everyone else using these cool kind of more visual features? We have a question. Ajit just had a doubt as to why there is a gap between image 16 and 17.
Yes, and the answer to that is just that there was an uneven number of images, and this is the way that the layout turned out using this custom visual. So I don't have a real answer to that. There was not, actually, let's take a look. I don't believe there was a sort order involved here, but let's just take a peek and see what I'm using here. So it looks like I'm only using the image field. So there is not any sort order on this. So this must have been sorted automatically by this custom visual, which I got just by going to the app source. And I probably just searched for image. It's hard to find different custom visuals that you really like. I always try a bunch of different ones and I don't always succeed, but this was what worked for this purpose. And I think the layout just was by default by the visual. So I think I did not choose that. The visual chose it.
Yeah, I think it looks kind of nice, but makes it well balanced and even.
We use the chiclet slicer as well in terms of visuals. I think it's pretty useful. And I know CloudScope have they do a few custom visuals that image focus. While you're sharing the screen, actually, Shannon, you mentioned at the start there were some other examples of responses you got. Is it worth just pulling up, if you have them handy, one or two of those? Talk through.
Thank you. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yes, absolutely. So before the formal call started, I was mentioning that the thing I like about Workout Wednesday the most is that we have responses from the community where people, post what they were able to do with the images. And so I always like to pull up and show off people's work, because this is your work that you've worked hard to produce. And I love seeing what people come up with. So this first example here, Shahzad, it looks like they, created the report kind of as we envisioned it, which is great. Then the next one that I really wanted to show off was this custom visual, which was done by the tool from one of our very own. And this visual, it's the GIF is a little bit small, so it's hard to see, but he actually, it doesn't look like it's moving. There we go. So he actually incorporated the data as well, which sometimes I don't always get to what would be the end goal for a business when I'm creating these challenges. I get to, what is my goal for the challenge, which in this case was the theme. But he incorporated data as well and used a lot of, I think he used solely Deneb visuals in this. So this is my favorite example. And I am going to drop this into the chat because I think it's just so beautifully done.
Yeah, that one's awesome. That's very cool. It's amazing what you can do with all of the like customizations with Deneb. It's very cool. We'll have to get you on, Daniel, and do another presentation for us on Deneb. I think since the last time you presented, you've made lots of updates. We've got a couple
I've
more.
got better presenting it as well.
Oh, cool. Each time. We've got a couple more questions, Shannon. So we've got a question here about what the custom visuals you've used in your version of the report. And also another one from James about how much does the psychology in the use of colors come into play when producing reports, or is this not a thing? So like I think James says, I feel that in itself is a useful tool. So psychology and colors.
Okay, so we will start with the first question, which I am able to answer. Then the second question, I would love to hear everyone's thoughts on. So for the first question, which custom visuals did I use in the report? I'm going to just share once more so that we can look at them together. So for this indicator selector, whatever you want to call this here, I did not use the chiclet slicer because I was having issues with the sort order. They were sorting funny, and I added a sort order, but I couldn't get it sorted. How many times can I say sorted in one sentence? So for this, I actually used the collage by CloudScope. So that was the custom visual that I used here. And then for this image, I used a different one. And this is the simple image. So keeping it simple, I used the simple image. And that was what I called the alternate image. So there are two custom visuals in this report. With that being said, I can say one thing that I'm sure you probably notice if you're playing around with the published version of this report, it renders really slowly. I think there are two reasons for that. One is because of the quality of the images, and two is custom visuals tend to take up a lot of bandwidth, a lot of juice. So there are two reasons why this is rendering pretty slowly. And I think in the case of someone actually looking at this, looking at the indicator, reading what the goals are, and actually using this for the intended purposes, it may not be such an issue, but it might be. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you're using kind of higher quality images combined with custom visuals. Those two things are really probably going to slow things down. So that is which custom visuals did I use. Let's talk now about the psychology of the colors, which I really can't speak to at all because I don't know much about the science of color, but I'm sure a lot of you on the line can definitely talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. I might open up the platform, Kerry, if you wanted to chat a little bit. You posted in the chat. I know this is something that that you're really interested in. Oh, you're just on mute, Kerry.
Yeah, no, so color psychology is definitely an interesting thing to look at, and that definitely does have an impact on our visceral and emotional responses, so that we know for a fact that the color red raises our heart rate and things like that. And so a visual with a lot of red in it will, stimulate us and affect our reasoning and our emotional responses in the way we think. And there's a really good example that was done by, use it, Andy Cockgreave or somebody, where he took the Iraq bloody visual and then spun it around and made it blue. And but just by looking at that, ourselves, we can determine our emotional reactions to those two different reports, and it tells a different story, and it incites different reasoning from that. So certainly plays into it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I guess a lot of us working in the environmental industry, on our reports, if we're doing any sort of risk assessment, we've got the traditional traffic light system, red, amber, green. So not only is it important to think about colorblind safe colors, so you can choose different hues for those shades to make them kind of safe, but also think about the message you're trying to convey, and if those colors are really appropriate. You don't want too much of a I don't know, freak out in the community if they see a whole dashboard of red with when you're talking about water quality and things like that.
Or similarly, like really bright poppy colours can be inappropriate when you're talking about, you know, somber things like death and mourning and depression.
Yeah.
And you've got bright pinks and cyans. It's quite inappropriate. So they do play a part.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot to think about when it comes to design, colours, accessibility. No, so this has been really interesting. Just mindful of everyone's time. We might just got another couple of slides to share just before we wrap up, but we're more than happy to stay on the line and have a bit more of a chat. So thank you so much, Shannon. That was an excellent session. I think we got a lot out of it, and I love it when it's a bit more of an open discussion. So thanks everyone in the group for your input as well. Next, if anyone wants to catch up or rewind, have a look at the techniques in a bit more detail, we'll be sure to share a summary on our blog and also host the video on YouTube and include lots of the links that Shannon and everyone's posted in the chat as well. And next month, we're having a bit of a mini series on the SDGs. We've got Will Thompson presenting. He's from the Microsoft Power BI team as well. He's presenting on the Gartner Bake-Off Challenge, which I think they released maybe a month ago. So that's where they used the UN Sustainable Development Goal data again with Power BI. So it's another really neat example. This time it's focused a lot on the data storytelling aspects and all of some really cool, neat visualizations there as well. So really excited for that one. It will be slightly earlier for us based in Australia. So it'll be a bit more of a morning tea time, so 10 to 11 a.m. But if anyone on the call is keen to present, we're always looking for new and interesting different presentations, anything to do with Power BI and the environmental or sustainability type data sets. So we would love to hear from you. It can be anything. Don't be scared if you're just a new user. Those are sometimes the best sessions, just hearing about your journey, how you got started with Power BI and anything like that. So please reach out and get in touch. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Our community keeps growing every month. So I think Christian mentioned at the start of the call, we're close to 2 years now, and we're edging towards 1,500 members, which is awesome. So thank you so much to all our regulars for coming every month, and also all the newbies. We love to see you. So thank you so much. As I said, we'll stay on the line for a couple of extra minutes. It's always good to catch up with people. But thanks again to Shannon. That was fantastic.
That's great. Thanks, Shannon. Thank you, everyone. We'll just stop the recording. Yeah.